As we've seen, there have been hundreds of iterations of bringing Dracula to life, from both comic books to TV to screen, but there's never been a story about Dracula as scary as The Last Voyage of the Demeter. I believe that this is the first time I've ever seen Dracula portrayed in such a terrifying, unforgivably horrifying way, and that is something that I think has always been missing from the Dracula story.
So before we get into this, I just want to reiterate that I'm not that much of a vampire fan, right? Of all the universal horror creatures, I'm definitely more of the wolf guy, all right? I'm the wolf man. I like the howling American werewolf in London and Paris, dog soldiers. But I still have obvious respect for vampires. I mean, I have friends that are big vampire fans. I mean, I've reviewed a lot of vampire movies as of late. I mean, Renfield was pretty cool. I discovered that Once Bitten Jim Carrey movie. I mean, but I'm still a fan of Teen Wolf. Give us a new, updated version of a great werewolf film. I'm totally down. But for the most part, this movie, I didn't watch The Last Voyage of the Demeter because it was based off of a excerpt from Bram Stoker's Dracula. I watched it because it just looked cool. Like, the aesthetic of everything looks fantastic. It's like a dark tone on a ship. I mean, put actors on a darkened ship that's not a Pirates of the Caribbean movie and just give it a dark tone with horror elements, and I'm fucking totally there, because that is good cinema. It's practically like watching theater, dealing with some type of supernatural creature. So I was totally for it. I thought it looked awesome. I mean, I think Guillermo del Toro has the Frankenstein movie coming out soon with Andrew Garfield, so that'll be pretty cool. And then Robert Eggers, who did The Northman, he's also doing Nosferatu coming up with William Dafoe, so that'll be pretty cool. And like Bill Skarsgård. So I mean, those will both be pretty good movies regardless. I mean, again, I'll watch Nosferatu, but also mainly because it's Robert Eggers and he's a fantastic director, so I can't wait to see what he's gonna do with it. Plus, William Dafoe. So I don't know who's gonna play Nosferatu, but anyway, getting off topic. So The Last Voyage of the Demeter is from Bram Stoker's Dracula, and it tells about the last days of the voyage of the Demeter, leading up to it getting to London, where Dracula is in fact on board and pretty much just murders the crew. Spoiler alert. But it was a great movie. I genuinely enjoyed it. I think people should go watch it. I mean, Barbie is like grossed over $1 billion or whatever right now because everyone fucking keeps watching it, I guess. It's like surpassed The Dark Knight. Like, how the fuck? Come on now. And it's looking to pass Harry Potter. I mean, come on. It's not that good of a fucking movie. So I would suggest that you just give your money to something else. But I can't believe that no one's going to watch this Voyage of the Demeter movie. It just looks, I mean, maybe if they would have cast Johnny Depp in it, and then people would have been like, oh, you know what? We really want a Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and we're not going to get one yet, anytime soon, at least, with Johnny Depp. So this is as close as we're going to get. If Johnny Depp was in this movie, it would have been fantastic. But instead, we have the guy from Game of Thrones and David Schmeichel, forget his name, but that guy, who is just as great. But if you would have recast that guy with Johnny Depp, and then still had the guy from Game of Thrones as the captain, I think this movie would have been fucking killer. Like, it would have really done a good job. But, or at least people would have flocked to the theaters specifically because Johnny Depp was in the movie. I mean, people still love the Depp, But yeah, it was a good movie. It was pretty solid. I mean, I will say, spoiler alert, there are a few things I didn't like about it, but as a whole, it was a good movie. I would suggest y'all watch it, but spoiler alert now, you can leave or just keep watching because, who cares? But there's a black guy in the film, right? He's like one of the main characters, and it's so funny because now it's becoming more prevalent where they're saying that, hey, if you want an Oscar, if you want to win any awards, you have to have diversity and inclusion and all this shit and all this stuff in your movie for it to even be possible to win the Oscar or whatever bullshit award the movies can win nowadays. And the black dude literally is the sole survivor. Okay, so there's three things that trip me out. So there's one, the black guy was the sole survivor. And it's like, I fine, Dracula kills everybody on board. And then this black guy literally is about to like square up with him. And you're thinking like, there's no way this nigga's going to take down Dracula because Dracula ends up in London. So he's not going to die on this ship. And the black guy like squares up to fucking fight him and shit. And you're like, oh, damn, nigga. And then that Dracula just like bitch slaps him. And you're like, well, obviously, like, he's got wings. There's no way this nigga's gonna take him down. Like, come on. And he does this whole bit where it's supposed... So remember, the movie is supposed to be told from the accounts of the captain's log. But there's this whole scene, like, the two scenes where the black guy is like, oh, I was oppressed. I was a black Englishman top of my class, but no one would hire me because of the color of my skin. And it's like, did the captain really have to log that down? Because I don't really give a shit. Y'all being oppressed by a fucking winged demon on this ship, so that don't mean shit. Like, I don't give a fuck about your education. No one gave a shit about the color of your skin at all, and throughout the entire portion of the movie, no one gave a fuck about this guy's skin color, and he literally just kind of brings it up, and you're just like, I mean, whatever. I guess, remember, oppression's real. So that was kind of stupid. Then there's this kid, and I will say the kid was one of my favorite parts of the movie, because the kid actually, spoiler alert again, the kid dies, but the kid dies like halfway through the movie, and in a legitimately decent way, kind of terrifying way, even if you like from the kid's perspective. And I had so much respect for it, because I thought that they were gonna have the kid survive to like the end or some shit, but it's like, nah, like everybody's fucking doomed from the beginning of the movie. Or when you find out that Dracula is quote on board the ship, you know that everybody's fucked. Like, no one's getting off this ship alive. And the way the kid dies, and the up to where he dies, it's just so well done. Like I said, the movie is just well done. The black guy's little like speeches are like the only parts of the movie that I just cringed over. But the movie's it's a well done, adventure horror movie, a sci-fi horror adventure. It's in the 1800s on a ship. It's fucking great. And then the last part that tripped me out was, okay, so Dracula, he kills most of the people. He kills everybody on board. But three people actually, he bites and turns, right? Now, the weird thing about him turning them is because they find this girl. And this girl, he gets brought in this crate. And these villagers bring him onto the Demeter. And it's so random, because it's like, all right, none of these fools on the boat could take down this thing, but this whole village somehow was able to not only subdue Dracula, but capture him and drain him of blood, or at least have him trapped long enough to where he's literally like thirsty as fuck when he gets out. But they trapped this like girl in there, right? They chose this offering, and she has all these bite marks on her because he's been feeding on her. So who knows how the fuck long he's been trapped, because like they literally put a snack in there for him to like sustain him. Now, throughout the film, when they find her, she doesn't turn. She's outside. She's in the sun. She's on the ship. She has all these bite marks on him. He ends up biting this one member of the crew, and he doesn't fully kill him, and he ends up turning him, because they end up saving him, and he ends up, turning, but he doesn't become a vampire per se, but, his eyes get all white and shit. He becomes all feral, and when they have him outside tied to the mast, because they're trying to figure out what to do with him, the sun rises, and he ends up catching on fire. It's actually a very cool scene. The effects look cool. Even the effects of Dracula and the CGI and the prosthetics or whatever they used of Dracula was cool. It was eerie whenever he's crawling on the floor and shit. Super. I mean, it was just well done. I did enjoy the movie. If it would have came out maybe in the early 2000s during the Pirates of the Caribbean era, I feel like this movie would have been way more of a hit. But so at the end of the film, you find out that the girl, she gets bit again, right? Everyone's dead except the girl and the black dude, and the girl gets bit again. But this time, I guess Dracula's like, all right, well, I'm going to give you a turning bite instead of just like a feeding bite. So when they think they killed him, and the ship ends up not sinking. They try to sink the ship because I guess, since Dracula's on the ship and he got invited onto the ship, they got to sink the ship, even though they don't know who he is. But I guess they just figure that's vampire logic, because that's how it goes. And the ship ends up crashing on London shore, of course. So he actually makes it to London, because he's supposed to. So the black dude and the chick are like floating on this like raft thing, like this makeshift stick and like debris from the ship. And she's like, oh, like, the sun's coming out, and like my eyes, I could feel it, like I've turned, like he turned me. He didn't just feed on me, he turned me. So the black guy's like, oh no, like, you can make it. And she's like, nah, like I'm dead now. So he's like, all right, like, you're gonna, because she's gonna fucking catch on fire. So she sits on top of the raft side, and then they separate, and he's like on the stick with his feet in the water. And it's like, motherfucker, totally they stole that shit from Titanic. Like the last 5 minutes of the movie are totally whack, because she's on this raft, and then she moves out towards sea, and then she catches on fire, but she's on this raft literally sitting above water, where the black dude is drowning. His legs are in the water. He's practically drowning. He's still miles away from shore, and she leaves him with the dinky ass stick to like to like possibly die on. It's like, bro, shouldn't you have got on the stick and like went out to sea and like burned up, but at least you're like in the water so you can like not have just a fully burning death. And then at least the black dude could have survived and sat on top of the raft and like been dry and made it to land safely. Like, it was like total bonkers. So then she burns up and dies, and then he of course makes it to shore, and it's like a couple days later or weeks later, whoever knows how long later, and he's in this bar and he's like now doing his own captain's log thing, because throughout the movie it's like, you know, captain's log of what's going on. But then the captain dies like how, like, you know, near the climax of the movie. So it's like, well, how does the captain know exactly what the fuck's going on? Now it's just the action movie of the people on the boat, but it gave you the feeling that it was going to be like, you know, dictated through the whole, like, you know, narrated through most of the film, and then maybe when the narration stops, then it would end in London. But it just kind of went like he died, like, and you're like, all right, well, there's still a lot of movie left, it seems. And at the end, the black guy is like doing the narration now, and he's like, oh, you know, I will catch this creature, I will like forever, like, you know, I'm going to take down this creature, like no one can say I can't do anything, or some racist wanting to be oppressed bullshit. And then he's in the bar he's in a pub writing this shit down, and then Dracula's like in the pub, and he sees him, and he's wearing like the top hat, traditional like Dracula, you know, with a cane and shit. And then Dracula like teleports to him, like grazes his neck, because he like cut his neck, you know, earlier in the climax of the movie, and then he like disappears outside, and the black guy's like, oh hell nah, and he's like walking outside, beelining it towards Dracula, like, I'm gonna fucking take this nigga down. And you're like, what the fuck, like, for real, bruh, like, he just killed the entire crew, and you've seen what he can do, and you think your black ass can just go out and fucking kill him. Like, it seemed like they wanted it to be like some type of sequel. They wanted to be a sequel, but I don't think there will be, of course. Like, it'd be so dumb. Oh, Mr. Clements. Watch it. I guarantee you'll at least have a good time. The jump scares are pretty funny. I mean, they're engaging at least. I mean, it's a good, legitimate adventure, thriller, horror movie on a fucking boat with Dracula. But anyway, this has been Ghost and the Craig. Thank you so much for tuning in, like, share, and subscribe. The Last Voyage of the Demeter, definitely suggest you check it out. I give it like a 7 out of 10. Solid 7 out of 10. All right? Sounds about fair. But, all right. You guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Peace.